So today, we're diving into a case out of the Gambia that really, it puts the entire justice system on trial. It's the story of Ousainou Bojang, and it forces us to ask a question that gets right to the heart of what the rule of law even means. I want you to just imagine this for a second. You're on trial. You're facing the most serious charges you can think of. You've spent years in prison, and then, finally, the judge looks at you and says, you're free to go. But just as you're about to walk out, just as you get that first taste of freedom, the state grabs you and throws you right back in a cell. What does that even mean? What happens to justice then? Yeah, see, this isn't just some thought experiment. This is exactly what happened to a man named Ousainou Bojang. His freedom, it lasted less than 24 hours. Just look at these dates. It's wild. March 30th, the High Court says he's innocent, orders his release. The very next day, March 31st, he and his sister are right back in custody, picked up by state security. It's an absolutely stunning turnaround. So, how on earth did we get to this point? To really get why this rearrest caused such an uproar, you have to go back. We need to look at the crime that kicked this whole thing off. Okay, so the story kicks off back in September 2023. A terrible shooting happens and 2 police officers lose their lives. Almost immediately, Ousainou Bojang and his sister Amie are arrested, and they spend the next, almost 3 years locked up in the infamous Mile 2 Central Prison while this whole trial slowly plays out. That is until that huge ruling in March of 2026. And you gotta understand, the charges they were up against were as heavy as it gets. We're talking 2 counts of murder, terrorism, a whole list of 5 criminal counts. The stakes here were literally life and death. So here's the really crucial part. You have to understand why the judge let them go. This wasn't some minor loophole. The judge was emphatic. The state had completely failed to prove its case. There was 0 forensic evidence, no DNA, no fingerprints, nothing. The witnesses kept contradicting each other. And all along, Ousainou had an alibi. The court's decision was incredibly clear. The evidence just wasn't there. Period. And that brings us right back to that shocking moment, the release and then the rearrest. This is where you see this incredible clash. What happens when one part of the government just seems to flat out ignore an order from another? And this slide, wow, it lays it out perfectly. On one hand, you have the judicial branch with a final legal order, acquitted and discharged. And on the other hand, you have the executive branch with a direct countermove, rearrested and detained. It's a total power struggle, playing out right in front of us. People were furious, and it really boils down to 3 big things. First, it just feels like a massive disrespect for the courts. Second, sending them back to Mile 2 prison, that hits a nerve. For Gambians, that place is a symbol of decades of torture and abuse under the old regime. And that leads to the third point. This looks exactly like the old authoritarian playbook, the very thing the new Gambia promised everyone they would leave behind forever. Now, this isn't just about how people feel. It's about the law. And believe me, the Gambia's own constitution has some very, very clear things to say about a situation just like this one. Okay, let's start with a legal idea you've probably heard of, double jeopardy. All it means, in simple terms, is that the state doesn't get a do-over. If a court finds you not guilty, that's it. They can't just keep trying you for the same crime until they get the result they want. And this isn't some vague idea. It is written right there in black and white in the Constitution. Section 24 is super clear. So unless Bojang is suddenly being charged with a brand new, totally unrelated crime, holding him for that same shooting looks like a direct violation of this basic right. All right, next up, the right to personal liberty. This is bedrock stuff for any democracy. It just means the state can't just snatch you off the street and lock you up without a legitimate, lawful reason. And again, the Constitution couldn't be clearer. The High Court literally just ruled that there was no evidence to keep him detained. So arresting him again without any new evidence? Well, that sounds like the very definition of an arbitrary arrest. And finally, this all ties into the separation of powers. I mean, think about it. For a court system to work at all, everyone else in the government has to respect its decisions. The Constitution actually makes this a requirement. This part of the Constitution is there to make sure a judge's ruling isn't just a suggestion. When the state rearrests someone, the court specifically said to discharge, it's basically challenging the court's entire authority. It throws the whole system out of balance. So where does all this leave the Gambia?
Well, this case is clearly way bigger than just one or two individuals now. It's become a major test, a real defining moment for the country. And this, right here, is the bottom line. Everyone is watching the Bojang case because it's a test of whether the promises of a new democratic Gambia that respects human rights are actually real, or if the country is in danger of slipping back into its dark authoritarian past. Now, let's be super clear on one legal point here. The state does have the right to appeal the judge's decision. Of course they do. But, and this is a huge but, filing an appeal does not magically give them the power to keep someone locked up. To keep someone in jail, you need a new lawful reason, like a whole new charge or a separate court order. And right now, it doesn't seem like either of those exist here.
Which leaves us with the powerful, frankly unsettling question that people all over the Gambia are asking. When all is said and done, when the judges have spoken and the Constitution has been read, who really gets the final say? Is it the rule of law, or is it just the person who holds the keys to the prison gate? That's the question the country now has to answer.